Hi, good morning. I'm Velvet with Quality Sewing and Vacuum, and today I'm going to show you how to make the perfect buttonhole. So for buttonholes, the style that you choose just depends on the type of project that you're doing. So we have a couple different types of buttonholes that you can utilize. So we have what's called straight buttonholes, which means they have bar tacks at the beginning and the end of your buttonhole. And then there's two different styles with these as well. So we have the straight bar tacks as well as rounded styles. And these are personal preference on which ones you like to use. We also have what's called a keyhole buttonhole, and these have little circles at the bottom here to help hold a button that has a shank. The shank of the button is this little piece right here at the end. So a lot of our modern sewing machines make it very, very easy to sew buttons on with the machine as well as make your buttonholes, but you do need a special foot to be able to do that. So the machine that I'm using today for the Brother series, we are using what's called your A foot. And the A foot is typically all plastic and white, or it has little bits of metal on it like this. And there's usually going to be an A down here at the bottom that will describe what foot you're using. Now in between the foot here, you have these two prongs, and you're going to pull up the top one to open up the slider, and then you'll place your button in here. So this little slider here will help determine how large of a buttonhole you have to make for your project. It will also add about 2 millimeters to the buttonhole to ensure that the thickness of the button will fit in between your project. So to attach this on the machine, you're going to attach it to the metal bar down here at the bottom, and it will attach here onto the ankle. Move our thread out of the way here. There we go. Now, when you sew on a buttonhole, you want to make sure that you're using fabric with some kind of stabilizer. The stabilizer is going to give the fabric the support that it needs. Otherwise, your fabric can pucker up and it won't look very nice. So there are two options that you can use. So in between here, I have what's called a tearaway stabilizer. They typically come on rolls like this. And you can also use something called fusible interfacing. Fusible interfacing can come on a roll, usually sold by the yard, or we also have it in small packages like this. Now this style here is ironed to your fabric, and it is permanent. It is intended to stay in the fabric to give it that support. Today I'm just going to be using the tearaway style here. So I'm going to place this behind my fabric like so. And normally I would want to mark somewhere on my fabric where I'm going to put my buttonhole. Otherwise it may not be put in the right spot. But today I'm just going to put it right wherever I feel like putting it. So I'm going to place my fabric underneath my presser foot here. And then I'm going to put my presser foot in the down position. Now I have to choose what stitch I'm going to use on my screen. So we have a menu here that has all of our different styles of buttonholes. And the great thing about this model is it tells us exactly what type of buttonhole that we're choosing here on the screen. So I'm just going to choose a standard squared buttonhole. And our last step before we can actually stitch the buttonhole is you have a little lever down underneath here in the machine. So the lever has an actual buttonhole printed directly on it that will tell you exactly what its use is. So this lever here is going to go behind the metal piece on your foot. And then this will determine how large your buttonhole is. So now for this machine, I can either use my pedal to stitch this out, or I can use my start-stop button. And I'm going to do it the easy way with my start-stop button. So I'm going to unplug the pedal here. And then once I get the green go arrow, I can go ahead and start. The machine will stop on its own, and then I can press my scissor button up here on the top of my machine, or I can also use my manual cutter to pull it out on my own. And there we have a buttonhole. and it will be the perfect size every time. So these extra tails that are on here can just be trimmed. They are from the bobbin or the top thread that just got pulled through. No big deal, they can easily be removed. So now from here I can remove my stabilizer very easily because this is tearaway, just by pulling it off the back of my project. and I'm left with a beautiful buttonhole. Now you can also open up these buttonholes very easily. There's a number of ways that you can do that. I like to use a buttonhole cutter. It is basically like a little chisel that you place a small mat underneath and then you press it into the opening and it opens up the buttonhole. If you do not have a buttonhole cutter, you can also use a seam ripper with a pin. So with the seam ripper, you would normally want to place a pin right here before the beginning of this bar tack. That way it ensures that you're not going to cut through all of these stitches that you just made. But today I'm just going to go ahead and try. And we're going to poke the seam ripper right into the end of our buttonhole here. And I'm going to gently pull up until I reach the top of my fabric and then stop. And I have my open buttonhole. Now, as for sewing on buttons, you can do this with the machine as well. So if you're ever found very tedious to sew a button on with, the machine will do this option for you. So I'm going to take my same button and I'm going to take a different foot this time. This is called the M foot, and this is the foot that you use on your Brother machines. And we're also going to choose a specific stitch to do this as well. Well, this is basically using a zigzag stitch to stitch back and forth. There is a certain stitch that will actually put the feed dogs down for me so I don't have to do it. So here in our buttonhole menu, if we scroll down to the other options, we have 4-18, and this is to sew our button on with. If you do not have this button on your machine, you will need to put the feed dogs down yourself. And to do that, you will take off the accessory tray here. And then typically you're going to have a lever either off to the underside here from the front of the free arm or here at the back side. But this model just has the button for us. So I'm going to put my accessory case back on. Now on this foot, you may notice that there is a little clear slider here. So when this is pulled forward, it's going to allow a little bit of space in between the button and the thread. And what this does is it allows a thicker button to be placed onto a thicker fabric, so it will have a little bit of space in between and you'll be able to easily put it into your buttonhole. You can also pull the little clear lever back and that will allow you to just simply sew right up against your button. There's also these little metal feet down here that have a large opening in between. So you can slide your button in between these two pieces, and you want to line up the little red markers here on the front of the foot with two of the holes on your button. And you can choose to either do the first two that are closest to you or the two that are further away. It's personal preference. So I'm going to stitch the two that are closest to me first, and I'm going to do my best to try and line that up as close as I can, and then I'm going to go ahead and attach this to the machine. There we go. Now, even though I tried my best to position this the best that I could, sometimes it does get a little bit messed up when I place the foot on the machine, so you may have to readjust this. But we're going to test this anyway. So I'm going to take my fabric here with my stabilizer on the back, just like I did before, and I'm going to place this underneath the presser foot. Where you position it is up to you, and you normally want to mark on your fabric where this is going to go. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the presser foot down, and I'm going to test this first. You never want to just start sewing because you could break the needle or the button. So I'm going to use the hand wheel on the right hand side of my machine, and I'm going to let the needle go in one side of the button and then switch over to the other side. And I usually do that more than once just to ensure that the button hasn't shifted. Once we know that it's in the right place, I'm good to go ahead and start. So once again, I can either use my paddle on the floor to sew, or I can use my start stop button. I'm going to use the start stop here. So my thread didn't quite catch, and it's likely because I did too many turns in the hand wheel here. So let's see if it does it again. Didn't want to work this time. Okay, so let's try that again real quick here. So we're going to pull our fabric out, and I'm going to pull my top tail a little bit longer and also rethread my needle. Perfect. Okay, so let's redo that. We'll pull that a little bit longer this time so we don't have that same problem. I'm going to try one more time just to make sure it's in the right spot. Okay, and then we will go ahead and start. There we are. Sometimes, depending on how many times I went back and forth, I will usually do it more than once, just to ensure that I have enough thread there that's going to hold my button for a very long time. So now I can press my scissors on my front of my machine and it will automatically cut the thread for me. This is also optional. You do not have to use the scissor button to get it to cut. You can also pull up your tails if you would like and hand tie them together, but it is up to you. So I'm going to lift my presser foot up. Now to remove the button from the machine, I can't just pull this towards the back or off to the side, because technically what's happening is the thread is sewing onto the foot itself. So I have to pull this forward to be able to release it. And then from here, I can just cut my extra tail and I have my button. And I can easily put it in to my buttonhole and it fits perfect every time. So this technique can be utilized for all different types of projects. I have a sweatshirt over here that I've made that has some really pretty embellished buttons over here that you could add for fun or for utility purposes. Both these methods were used to attach them to this machine or to this project. You can also add them as closures for things like bags or just added embellishment if you like something a little pretty there. And they can also be added to other projects just for fun, like quilts and pillow closures or anything else you can think of. All right. Okay, yes. Thank you guys so much for watching today. I appreciate your time. Make sure you tune in next week for our next How Do I.